Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy and we are once again diving into system design and taking that crazy idea that you might have forward into a physical product. And to do that today, I'm joined by two amazing content creators. They've written their own system, Quintessence, and so they're going to tell us how easy it was, and that it's been an absolute dream with no difficulties whatsoever. And we'll see exactly what comes from that. And remember, if you like these videos, hit that like button so that I know, I beg your pardon, I know to make more content on this format. So, Charlotte Trainer and Juan Moore, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, Quintessence, the bright orange book. I have to say, the cover in itself is unique. And I'm just, before we jump into what the system is and how it works and that sort of thing, the two of you were quite responsible for this book, almost in totality. If you sort of read the who did what, it's like, well, you did this, you did that, you did this, you did that, you did this, you did this, you did this. So this is definitely a labor of love.
It absolutely was, yes.
Okay.
But like
What's
you were
the
saying
origin
before,
story? Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
No, go for it.
No, all I was going to say is when it comes to the fact that both of us have been very heavily responsible for almost every aspect of it, that is one part, I think, of the creation and production that actually has gone in our favor. I know that things like artwork, graphic design, layout is something that a lot of game designers have to invest a lot of personal money into to get going in the first place, just from a practical perspective. So being able to have the tools to do that ourselves, I think really helped in getting it to market a little bit sooner than maybe we would have been able to otherwise.
Absolutely. And we'll while we're on that subject, so the artwork in the book, you both did the artwork.
Yeah.
And it's very evocative. It's all black and white. Kind of lithograph woodcut style, some of them anyway, some of them are sketches, some of them talk to me about the artwork. How did you sort of decide, we'll do that? Because for me, I'm currently doing the artwork for my latest book and it's about 80 odd images.
Yeah,
and
I think Quintessence is sorry.
Yeah. No, go for it.
Quintessence is about, I think there's about 80 images in that one as well. I think we decided very early on that we wanted to make a physical book. And we both come from kind of an illustration-ish background. And we knew, I've worked in publishing before, and we wanted to keep the costs down. So initially black and white was to keep the costs down, but we both love the black and white aesthetic. And I notice in a lot of kind of particularly American role-playing games, there's a very oversaturated, very digital look to a lot of the artwork. So part of it was a bit of a reaction to that. But when we started illustrating it, we realized because our game is system agnostic, it's actually quite difficult to think of what to illustrate. So we kind of sat down, we divvied it up, we had a chat about what should be where and what should we illustrate. And as we went through it, to begin with, Charlotte and I have two very different styles of artwork. And we both have different speeds at which we produce it as well.
I'm the slow one, just I'll put my hand up to that.
But, they kind of, with keeping them black and white, they kind of complemented each other pretty well. And as we went through it, we realized we both became a little bit more adventurous in how we were going to produce them. So we both experiment with different media. So we ended up kind of rocking about 6 or 7 different styles of illustration, even though there's only 2 of us illustrating it. And I think it holds together pretty well, actually. I was quite pleased with the final look of the book in the end.
Yeah, I think we were both keen that because it's setting agnostic or neutral, that it did have an illustrative component to it to spark your imagination, but it didn't sit in that zone where the style is so overwhelming that that's the only thing that you can possibly visualize. So for us, the black and white was an attempt to give it some kind of visual cohesion, but allow your imagination to run wild a little bit, because that just really echoes the whole ethos of the game system itself.
Absolutely. And because you folks are we're talking artwork and that sort of thing, Did you go, all right, we need an image for every 2 pages. We need an image for every 3 pages. How did you come up with your count in the first place? Because I know I have a very bad method of doing it, but how do you guys do it?
I initially thought we should have at least one image per spread. And then when I initially started laying it out, I decided, oh, but that bit needs an illustration. And oh, yeah, so kind of whatever. We'll sometimes do a spread with 2 illustrations on it. So it was really, it began with a plan and then sort of evolved into, okay, I think this bit needs illustrated. So we adapted it as we went, really. Yeah.
And did you ever sort of struggle for inspiration? Did you sit there going, okay,
Yes.
we need a block. We've got a block. It's a quarter page, or it's a half page, or it's a full page.
Yes, definitely. I can say that. I think especially for so Ewan created the initial layout to begin with, and just blocked out. This is where we have text. This is where we have an illustration, which was enormously useful. But then sometimes when it came to, okay, I'm 30 images in and struggling to figure out how to what to do for my next illustration, and then finding out that okay, I've got a bit of an idea for a particular landscape or environmental piece I want to do, but then realizing, oh, actually, but the size and ratio and dimensions of this is actually incredibly narrow and very, very tall. So yeah, we had a lot of fun brainstorming that. And actually,
Yeah.
I think I find with lots of avenues of creative work that when you have those initial roadblocks and barriers, I think it really does force you to think outside the box. And actually, those are, I think, the illustrations that I like the most, because you've really had to consider what to do and not just go with your initial instinct. So yeah, I actually found those strangely rewarding.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we discovered that Charlotte likes kind of square or landscape images, and I like long, thin images.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder what that says about the
who
personalities behind it, but I don't know. I don't know. Freud can have his field day.
Yeah.
Yes. So my graphic designer, he does the mock-ups and he says, right, you need this many pictures, and we've got a sort of a formula for the book, because we do an image every 4 pages, every 2 spreads, basically, give or take. And then he'll take it all and he'll do all the layout and he'll send it back to me with these big, bright pink boxes where he needs more artwork. And it always feels like I'm submitting 100 images and then there's coming back this PDF with about 100 blocks of pink in it. I'm like, where did the images go that I made? Oh, well, there and there and there and there. We just need these more. Okay, we just need more. All right, so that's fine. Moving forward, if you are going to release additional books and things, and I assume that you are, will you carry on with this art style?
Yeah, we've got a few books in the pipeline. One I laid out the other day, and sort of made a list of the illustrations we're gonna need. So yeah, I think we're gonna stick with the black and white. I think we're both through doing the core rulebook. I think we both realised the sort of images we enjoy doing. So it's a case of now we're a bit more familiar with what it is we want to say, and in a way it's a lot easier because the other things we're working on are much more specific. They're not so up in the air or dealing with kind of how action works within not a setting. Now we have a setting and a framework to work with. It's a lot easier. And as a rule of thumb, I think we worked out that Charlotte really enjoys environments and props and monsters. And I really enjoy people and action and monsters. So we figured something out there.
It's a good combo. It's a good combo. That's brilliant. All right, so let's talk about what is Quintessence very, very, very quickly. What is the actual system itself?
Yeah, well, I think the simplest way to describe it is a setting agnostic system. So it's really a framework or a toolkit to create role-playing games of any genre at all. June and I have talked at length about this because lots of people say, well, aren't most systems agnostic or setting neutral? But what you'll find is a lot of systems could be that, but actually they are slightly more geared towards fantasy or slightly more geared towards sci-fi. So what we've tried to do is really break it down to the core principles of what we like to focus on in role playing, and create a toolkit that you can basically reskin it however you like. So we've got a real focus on inclusivity and accessibility, player creativity and player agency. So we are both GMs and players who like to say yes as often as possible, and have seen countless players become more and more frustrated when they desperately want to do something. They're really envisaging this exciting outcome or a way of doing something. And I think we've all had it where whatever framework of rules you're using says, well, actually, it doesn't quite work like this. And the GM either says, so no, you can't do it like that, or ends up having to homebrew a different way to do it. But it doesn't feel creatively or emotionally satisfying for the player. So we've tried to really give the player as much agency as possible, but within a robust framework of rules that doesn't break the game. So everyone's still on the same level playing field, but you just have more creative ownership. And within that, there's fast-paced action, which was something we were very, very keen on as well, rather than action or combat being the kind of typically slowest part of a role-playing game. We were keen for the exact opposite. And a free-form magic system as well, so that, again, a simple, robust framework of rules that can apply to any kind of creative or visualized skinning at all. I do realize I said in the simplest form, and then it proceeded to explain with lots of additional words. But yeah,
it's wonderful. So you rolling dice? Is it a dice system?
It is, yeah. When we were developing the game, one of the first things when we'd actually committed to developing a role-playing game, the first thing we did was we thought, right, okay, well, what's fun about rolling dice? And realized very, very quickly that rolling a giant handful of dice is a lot more fun than rolling just one dice. And through playtesting, that definitely became true. So it's about generating a dice pool, essentially in a very creative way. So we don't have attributes as such. We have approaches, which are little descriptors on how you might solve a problem. And you build your dice pool by adding however many dice you've got for one approach and another approach, add them together. That's your dice pool. There are other things you can add to it. Very, very simple. We use every kind of dice there is, except the crazy ones that are, like a D30 or something like that. We use the standard polyhedral set. But you've just got to get over 4 on any dice, and that counts as 1 success for each roll over 4. If you roll the highest number on the dice, that counts as 2 successes. If you roll the lowest number on the dice, the 1, that subtracts one of your successes. So you can end up with negative successes.
Yeah.
What we do that's quite different to what other games is, if you roll too many negatives, you can give them to the GM, but that allows the GM to add them to their dice pool for any future roll.
Right. Nice.
So it can be very tactical. Likewise, if you rolled the maximum number on a dice and it's an extra success and you don't feel like you need it, you can save that success to be an extra dice for something else later on.
Yeah, it's funny. We accidentally ended up through a lot of playtesting with this. What we were trying to design initially as a very accessible game and creative game. When we started playtesting it with people who maybe had more of a wargaming background, less role playing, they really started to latch on to the tactical part of it, which was really interesting because it does work very, very well for that. But you find that tactical players can sit alongside role-playing players who just want to have the best experience and play their character, and they're on the same level playing field, and that collaboration is something that I've really enjoyed seeing through playtesting. But yeah, you can get this really interesting risk and reward system, both with the spread of polyhedral dice. So because of the crit and the crit fail and success, with a D4, you're always going to get a critical success if you roll a 4. So there's that high reward, but then equally high risk, because you're
One
only
in four,
guaranteed to do
yeah.
that 25% of the time. So sometimes you get these players who are like, well, why wouldn't I always use a D12? It's so much more likely. Yes, it is. It's much more likely that you'll get a 4 and get a success, but it's actually much less likely that you'll get that critical. So it kind of works both ways for those tactical players and those players who actually just want to roll whatever they want in front of them and choose based off the approaches and the way they want to do things, rather than focusing on the mechanics and metagaming.
Yeah, I think
on that line. Sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say, with the approaches, another thing we discovered during playtesting was, and it was particularly with that, we playtested with all sorts of different people, and we had a couple of groups that were I think they came from a wargaming background, to be honest with you, and I was genuinely quite worried about playtesting something that we were sort of selling as kind of very creative and very freeform, and they actually loved it, which was amazing. But it encouraged something that we've been calling secret role playing, for people who maybe aren't that great at role playing, or that isn't their focus of the game, but because of the approaches, the way they phrase how they're going to do something kind of forces them to play their character a bit more, which was really nice to see. And the wargamers, when they filled out our little form afterwards and gave us feedback, they said that was the thing they enjoyed the most, which really blew my mind.
Secret role playing. I've never heard that term before. I've heard of a closet role player, but that's someone who hides their role-playing addiction from the rest of the world. But a secret role player, I think that's lovely. So when it comes to playtesting, you use different groups and things. What was your process for forming those groups? Was it just, hey, we need playtesters and we'll take whatever we can get? Did you have a conscious approach?
We have a group that we play RPGs with regularly. So they were the kind of core playtest group. And when we were comfortable enough, we literally just talked to the guy that runs our local kind of board game cafe to see if we could run like a games night. And we had loads of people sign up, fortunately. So we were able to run kind of 2 games at a time. Charlotte ran one and I ran one. And we did this a few different times. And the feedback every time was totally different, but it was all very useful. And we did make changes based on those sort of fairly late stage playtesting, but it was very useful.
Yeah. So I guess in a sense we didn't really curate who we were targeting, I suppose. We to a certain extent have a smaller pool of people to choose on the Isle of Man, unless we were going to play digitally, but we were quite keen to get that instant feedback across the table. But yeah, like Juin said, the feedback was enormously useful, and I cannot emphasize enough how much you can't predict how someone's going to react to your game. Everyone has a different play style anyway, and that's why I like GMing random games as well with new people, because it's another opportunity to learn how people like to story tell, how people like to collaborate and role play, but equally how they're going to react to your brand new system, your brand new mechanics. So it was enormously valuable.
And have you found that there has been more feedback from folks who are now running the system where neither of you are present?
We've had a little bit so far. We're hoping to get more. So because we've just released the toolkit to begin with, we haven't got any really simple pick up and play adventures, which we are working on and we'll tell you about later. But we have had quite a few people getting in touch with us, telling us that they are starting to run game groups, giving us a little bit of feedback, and predominantly, I think why that's been really useful is they've not really been giving us feedback on how the game has been going, but what sort of resources would be useful for them, which we have been encouraging. So there's been some interest in having some more digital resources, which we're looking into. Having an actual play video online to be able to watch how it actually transpires at the table. So those are things we've really taken on board and we're working on, and hopefully we'll be filming later in the month an actual play that we can put online so that people can see what it looks like, because there are some aspects of it I think that are really quite removed from most role-playing systems available at the moment, and the crux of them we think is actually quite simple, but because it's so different and so alien, I think we're really going to benefit from just showcasing how it works in real life.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now,
Charlotte is really good at answering questions when people ask them in an email. When they ask a really specific question about a system, I think that's Charlotte's favorite thing to do. So if you have got any system questions, just send them to Charlotte. She loves answering them.
I like feedback. I like hearing from people. Yeah, always drop me an email.
fantastic. What did you struggle most with? If you were to sort of say, oh, this was the worst part, what would that be, do you think?
The name was one of them.
The name.
The name
about
of
the
it.
name.
I know it sounds daft, but we started I think in total, I think it was maybe just shy of 2 years we spent kind of developing this. And we used to just meet once a week in a cafe and talk about it, and then we'd go off and do our thing, and then the following week we'd do it. So it was fairly relaxed, but it was just shy of 2 years from initial idea to having a physical book. But I think on day one, we started thinking about a name, and it was literally, I think Charlotte came up with it on her way home from work one day and just said, hey, I know what we're going to call it. But this was like, I think I'd already laid out most of the book. I know we didn't have the logo when I started laying it out. So yeah, it was really late that we came up with the name, but that's by the by. Or when we decided we were going to play a game without attributes, I think coming up with the different approaches took a long time. And combat, I found a really old version of our character sheet the other day in preparation for this, and realizing how clunky our kind of action system was to begin with, that relied on drawing in grids and all sorts of crazy stuff that we eventually scrapped. But,
it was just massively simplified. Yeah. Oh, definitely, and I think it's been a journey of constant simplification, or probably, if you speak to Joe, and honestly, a journey of me overthinking things and overcomplicating things, and then him helping me to simplify my thoughts. So yeah, we work in quite different ways, and it's been really complementary. Like we almost work in polar opposite ways, and it's been so helpful to progress the journey to a point that has benefited us both. It's been really, really interesting.
And just with regards to sort of simplification, has that been sort of a motto almost, kind of going, well, if it's simple, it's better, or
not really. I think we always come back to a very fundamental question, which is very easy to forget when you're in the bowels of developing a system. Is it fun? If it's not fun, take it out. That's simply it. And quite often, making something fun is a case of either simplifying it or fleshing it out a little bit more. Like Charlotte talks about simplifying things, and we did. It was very clunky to begin with, and we did kind of narrow it down to what is fun and what works. But there were other things that we did kind of bump out, like our magic system. I think to begin with was way too simple, to the point where it was just not fun. It just didn't work. So we added kind of another layer on top of that to make it more fun, more creative, more inventive.
Yeah, I think in terms of simplification, what we did was really try to simplify the core system. So essentially, what is the dice pool system, and then only add detail around the edges where it made sense and where it, like June said, was fun. So for us, one of the crux of it really was, does it work narratively? So that was kind of our mantra going through, really. So I think some of our backgrounds with role playing was a bit of frustration with, well, why does it make sense that I get this attribute at level X? What is this arbitrary thing that's happening about, like, when I get to go in a turn? Why is it making sense narratively? So I think, the simplification to the dice pool, and then saying at every stage, does it make sense narratively? Can we make it make sense narratively? And then building from there. And at its core, you could play Quintessence with a really stripped down, bare bones version of it, just with a couple of dice and your core approaches. And then on top of that, because playstyle is so personal, you can keep adding a little bit more crunch if you want. So you can add the perks and quirks that make your character unique. You can add your different endeavors, which could be magical or they could be social. So there's elements of ways that you can add that crunch, but actually not changing that core dice pool system, which is the sort of simple hub of it.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think one last thing we sort of ended up doing, and I do remember having a conversation about this, was sort of changing some of the roles of a player and a GM. So I always feel a bit sorry for GMs when they have to design their own world, which is hugely fun and it is amazing. But it is very time consuming and it can be a bit soul destroying if you've got a player who doesn't quite like it. So with Quintessence, the onus isn't just on the GM to develop absolutely everything. The player has a lot of choice in how they develop their character. So for example, if you've got, I don't know, your version of elves in your world, you can describe how they live, where their environment is to your players. And then the player comes up with what abilities would be pertinent to their particular elf, or how they interpret your description of an elf. And the onus is on them to kind of play that character with those abilities.
Absolutely, and going back to what I was saying about never knowing how people are going to react to your game or play or involve with storytelling, it's the same kind of thing. As a singular GM, or even as like a group of game designers, you're never going to have the amount of input or experience of all of your players. So to have that creative input just creates like a whole new level of interest for me anyway, just to hear where people's minds are going. Like I said, you can't predict it, but to have a robust framework that facilitates that, keeps everyone on the same level playing field, but actually the whole table gets to benefit from everybody's creativity and weird little ideas.
Love those
magical.
weird little ideas. Yeah.
Oh, that's what makes the games, isn't it?
It does. It really does. So, when did you decide you had put enough into the rule book? Did you get to a point where you're like, okay, enough. We do not need to calculate how much money you would make for transporting an egg 5 miles and selling it at market. We don't have to go that far. How did you decide this was it?
I think I'm really impatient. So Charlotte has the patience of a saint. I am the most impatient person you'll ever meet. And I think because we do work really differently, I write everything as succinctly as humanly possible. And Charlotte will fill notebooks full of stuff. Notebooks full, sometimes back to front, all the way through. It's all over the place. I can never make head nor tail of Charlotte's notes. I'm really sorry. I said I wasn't going to mention that, but it just gets me riled up every time.
I own it. I absolutely own it.
That's good. That's good. So I think we got to a point where we'd both agreed on the core system, and we tested it between ourselves enough times, and we tested it with our kind of core group, and I think we'd done a couple of public play tests at that point. And I just got impatient and started typing it up. And then it ended up that we laid it out, and then suddenly we were doing illustrations, and it was all down to my impatience, to be honest with you.
Yeah, suddenly I got a list of 70 illustrations I had to do over a couple of months, and and it was happening, which is great. Yeah, like Jude said, we do work in very, very different ways, and I would have naturally followed my inner perfectionist and wanted to hone them and hone everything and do more and more play testing and check that it was exactly right. But yeah, at some point you've just got to unleash it to the world and see what other people make of it. So I think it was a perfect time to do it.
Yes.
And yeah, where you call that in any project, I think is really difficult to know. But I think by giving ourselves the kind of deadline of okay, well, we're at least going to write it all out in a book rather than just carry on in our notebooks or at our regular game table, that really helped us understand whether it felt finished or not. And some parts didn't, and that gave us the opportunity to say, okay, well, for this chapter about action, we need to flesh out a little bit more. We need to trial a couple of these, or we need to make it more succinct. So it was a really useful endeavor. And then I think ultimately, when we actually went for the press the button of publishing, this was me being a little bit impatient as opposed to Dewan. I on a whim booked a stand at UK Games Expo, not 100% knowing it would be ready, but that gave us a really tangible deadline.
I feel like I should point out how much of a whim that was. Like, I don't think your viewers know, we're based on the Isle of Man, so it's not exactly easy to get to and from
No.
It's certainly not cheap anyway, but if you've got boxes and boxes of books as well, it becomes really expensive. And I do remember saying to Charlotte, it's like, oh, great, yeah, that'll be really good. How are we actually going to do this? And I thought it was brilliant. Her whole attitude was like, oh, we'll just do it. But, we did.
Just do it. Well,
just do
figure
it.
it out.
Yeah. Just figure it out. We'll do it live.
Brilliant.
Yeah. But
so, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
You've mentioned that you have some bits and bobs in the works. You've already done some layouts. What else can we expect? What more can we expect?
So we've got 3 different adventures, introductory adventures for 3 very different settings that we've written, and a couple of them were involved in the play testing. So we've played them a lot. So we've worked all the bugs out of them well and truly, I hope. So we're releasing that as a PDF and a book fairly soon. So that's almost ready to go. That's called Vampires, Vikings, and Robots. Yeah.
So yeah, three one-shot adventures of very different genres.
Yes.
Hopefully that's obvious with the Vampires, Vikings and Robots title.
I'd love to play in that game.
Yeah, I would. But we kind of wanted to showcase simply how flexible Quintessence could be with different genres, and just in a nice, easy pick up and play one shot. So this hopefully will be a really nice introductory couple of adventures for anyone who just wants to get a feel for the system and see how you could skin it into whatever setting you like. So like June said, we've written all of that. We're just starting to work on the layout aspect, and our illustrations have been decided. So yeah, it'll be a matter of getting our head down on that and hopefully publishing that within a couple of months. We would hope.
Certainly by the end of the year, we'll have that one out.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And then
so where can
Ewan,
people find stuff? Sorry, you were saying.
No, it's all right. I was just going to say, Ewan is also he's been taking the lead on a larger setting book, which is his Age of Goblins setting. So that will be a slightly more of a sort of a resource for picking up and playing a mini campaign or a set of adventures based in a almost purely goblin world, which has been really fun. So Ewan's done the first bit of writing there, and I'm now editing and adding a little bit of narrative goblin flair to it. So again, hopefully that'll be out by the end of the year as well, but it will be a slightly more comprehensive guide if you want something to really get your teeth into.
Lovely. Lovely. So where can people find all of this stuff? Where can they go to pick up a copy of Quintessence?
So if they can't get it in their local game shop, they can get it from our website, which I'm sure Charlotte knows the web address of because I can't remember it right now.
It's quintessenceTTRPG.com.
Yes.
Okay, and you can buy a physical book or a PDF. So I think our physical book is £30.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
And the PDF is 15.
Yeah, and there's also a couple of free resources on there as well. So if you just want digital versions of the player character sheets or some GM tools, so we've made a whole lot of quite simple framework of rules for setting up an adventure or like establishing a campaign and tone. So there's a couple of interesting resources there that you can just download and get a general feel for it if you want to, first of all. And we do have a good handful of bricks and mortar UK independent retailers as well. And forgive me because I will not remember all of them. They are all fantastic and thank you for supporting us. But they are more or less north, south, east and west all over the British Isles. So we have our lovely local gaming store on the Isle of Man, the Adventurers Tavern, which is superb. Hello, Dom and Molly. And then we have all the way up in Scotland, Ancient Robot Games on the England-Wales border, Shop on the Borderlands, down in the south, and London Leisure Games, and lots of other fantastic folks in between if you want to go and support those lovely local game shops as well.
Brilliant. Fantastic. That's wonderful. Well, I'm sure we will be chatting again in the future, especially with setting books coming out. That's very, very exciting. It's wonderful. Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Last thought, and it's got to be a quick one because we're running out of time, is would you recommend to folks, if they've got a gaming system sort of banging around in the back of their heads, would you suggest that they start this journey, or has it been arduous and all-consuming?
Ooh, Go for it, Jen. Go.
I would say be clear about what you want to do with it. So if you have a game system and you want to publish it, absolutely go down this road. I've thoroughly enjoyed everything we've done, even when it seems, because it can seem really daunting sometimes because there's so much you've got to consider, but it's great fun, particularly if you can collaborate with somebody as well. You got to have a laugh, and I think we're both pretty good at not being particularly tied to an idea and willing to compromise and willing to change. That's quite important. But be prepared for what people expect when you release a game. I mean, when I say we released this by the seat of our pants a little bit with the UK Games Expo, we literally picked the books up from the printer on the way down to the expo. And it was quite surprising how many people who were really nice, everybody was lovely, but the amount of people who said, oh, do you have web support? Do you have a PDF? Do you have an actual play recorded and everything like that? And it's like, dude, we literally just printed it. So be prepared. I don't think we were quite as prepared as we probably could have been, but yeah. But no, it is great.
And also, and you're never going to know until you leap into it. So I'm glad we did go ahead and do it. But to add my very short 2 cents, and it will be short this time, I've loved every stage of the journey. It's been one of the most fun things that I've ever been involved in. And to anyone else who's vaguely thinking about it, I would say absolutely go ahead and start playing at your game, start adding those mechanics, start play testing, and see if it works, see if you enjoy the process, see if you enjoy the feedback. And then from that stage, then maybe it's another conversation with yourself to see, okay, well, would I be interested in the logistical part of doing it? Because that is a very different, a different part of the game. But I think get those initial ideas out, start tweaking and having fun at the table, because you never know what's going to come from it, except it will almost always be fun. So just go for it.
There you go. Anyway, thank you for joining me, both of you. It's been wonderfully insightful, and yes, I love these things. We talk about so many different wonderful things and learn so many different things. It's fantastic, and I wish both of you the very best of luck for Quintessence moving forward. And of course, thanks to you for watching all the way through to the very end. Massive thank you to my Patreons who are getting world system stuff on a monthly basis for the world setting of Braxia, which is what I do. And again, if you want any of the Quintessence stuff, the link for the website where you can buy it is in the doobly-doo down below. Until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of game design. Goodbye.